No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. On this Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about interview questions.
Oh, I like this. Are you going to interview me?
I'm going to interview you, yes. No. The reason I want to bring this up is because I've seen a lot of kind of guides online about interview questions to ask, and a lot of them are good, but some of them are seriously lacking. I think with the amount of interviewing that a lot of people are doing, people have gotten better at answering questions in a way that satisfies whatever that interview question is, but that doesn't necessarily allow the interviewer to truly assess the kind of person that they are hiring. And I think what that leads to is a lot of organizations having people who interview very well, and they end up not being able to execute in the moment on the things that you need them to execute. And obviously, no one will argue with you that there's a better way to figure this out than to actually see a person in action. But how do you see a person in action when they haven't been hired yet, right? So it's this age-old kind of problem of you want to know how they're going to do the job before they do it, but you can't hire them before you hire them, right?
Right.
An example I can just think of off the top of my head is on my recent interview with Stephen Shedletsky, he talks about in his book, Speak Up Culture, about how his sister went to go interview to be a doctor at a hospital that prided themselves on doctors with great bedside manner. And one of the questions that she was asked in the interview was to teach the interviewers how to do something that she was passionate about. And she chose dance because she had years of kind of dance practice. And they didn't care about knowing how to dance, and they were terrible dancers. But what they wanted to see is how would she respond when they inevitably didn't dance well or follow instructions well or do what they were supposed to do? Did she react with positivity and encouragement and know, okay, you're getting it and you're moving through this? Or did she roll her eyes and be like, no, I told you to put your arm here, how did she react in the moment? I thought it was a brilliant interview question, and it's made me think about other interview questions that kind of disarm the process and allow leaders to really get a sense of who they're interviewing, as opposed to just going by the book of these are the questions you answer and ask, and these are the points you score, and here's how you objectively move through people. There has to be a better way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great conversation. And I remember there were books written about this, 15, maybe 20 years ago. Some of the big, crazy questions that they would ask in some of the really big, I think it was about Microsoft or Google or something like
Google,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had these crazy questions they would ask, and that was the intention, was to how do you problem solve? How do you work under pressure? How do you imagine? How do you kind of step out of the kind of the box of the norm and come up with creative solutions? And they were trying to assess for a lot of those types of things, and I really like that. I think that there is value in having a consistent kind of interview experience that allows you to assess people against specific, skills or competence, or maybe even some value aspects to get their opinion on an interview process. But to what you're sharing, I'm a huge fan of what are the different types of questions or things that you can do that give you a greater look into who the person is.
Yeah.
And what are their passions and what do they do, and how do they think about whether it's the work or the perspective of the work. There's a lot of things that can be done and questions that can be asked that allow you to really get a better sense of who are you hiring, not just the skills maybe that they bring to the job.
Yeah, we can all agree that attributes are more important than skills. You can teach the skills. The attributes of what makes a person who they are things that are a lot harder to teach. They're not impossible. But people largely are who they are from an attribute standpoint. Is a person creative? Does a person think outside the box? Do they like people? Do they have empathy? These kind of attributes are things that people bring with them and that allow them to learn the skills. So give me somebody who has all these positive attributes who doesn't know anything, and you can teach them anything. But give me somebody who has a ton of skills and doesn't have these attributes, and they might work well for the moment, but as soon as the business changes or new skills are required, they're going to be a lot harder to bring along for the ride because they kind of want to stay things the way they are. Another question I can think of that gets asked in a lot of interviews is, the old, tell me your biggest weakness, right? And then I hear that, and I think the cliche answer is, well, I'm too honest, or I'm a perfectionist, or whatever that is, and it's like you have to watch these interviewees do mental gymnastics on how do I say something that's a negative but really have it be a positive and reframe it in a way that doesn't make them decide not to hire me. And what I like to ask instead in a question instead of what's your biggest weakness is, when things get stressful, tell me what kind of support you need from me. So if I'm your leader and you're having an issue, what kind of support are you looking for? And what I'm looking for is for a person to say to me how they're going to respond or how they're going to react in a situation that is stressful, because that's when a person's weaknesses come out, is when they're under stress and pressure versus when things are hunky-dory. And so what I'm going to ask you, Lorenzo, is what's a question that you have gone to in your interview process that you think has reliably been a good predictor of how a person will actually perform in the job they are being hired for? And so I want to ask you that, but first I want to give it up to word for one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, what's a go-to question you have that has not been you found people haven't figured out how to fake it yet? They actually have to. It's actually a key determining factor in how a person's actually going to do their job.
There's a couple of them that I like that give me kind of a good kind of look into who the person is. The one that I would probably say sticks out the most is I like to ask people, like, tell me about a time in your life where you really exceeded your own expectations, where maybe you set a goal to do something and you didn't only achieve the goal, but you were just blown away by how well you did and kind of how that shocked you.
Why do you like that question?
Because I think it allows me to understand, like, what are people's intrinsic motivations? What bar do they set for themselves? What are the goals that they have, not just at work, but in life? How do they measure those types of things? We talk a lot about perseverance and grit, but I think a lot of times you kind of hear those factors come out in a question like that because many times that will spark an answer where it's something really big, in life. And sometimes it's not, and that's okay, because even if maybe you haven't had, maybe life or work experience where you've had these really big things that have happened, but there's still something there. And if there's not, if it's a tough answer, if they're not able to kind of speak to something where they've set a goal for themselves and they've overachieved it, that's also a little bit of a peek into maybe where they are in regards to how they would show up, right? So I'm thinking about this specifically in like the leadership context, because if I'm looking for somebody who is going to be a leader, that element of lifelong learning and setting the bar and evolving is really going to grow from that kind of approach to life, and to thinking about like I know that when I apply myself and I put my mind to something, not only can I achieve it, but I can exceed it. And like that's a very powerful element of kind of focus and confidence that's needed to be able to then kind of feed into that as you're helping them with their growth and development.
So what's something that you could hear from an answer to that question that would set up a red flag, that would make you think, ooh, this might not be the right candidate?
From a leadership standpoint, if it does not have an element of maybe leading people or leading themselves, if it does not have a really clear kind of like self-motivated goal, if I hear something that's like, well, like at my last job, my boss asked me to achieve this, and then I achieved it and then some. Again, like this is kind of what I'm listening for. Is like,
Sure.
Okay, I want to dig a little bit deeper then, because again, like, does it have to be an assigned goal, or is it something that you're kind of pushing for yourself? If the goal, or I'm sorry, if the example is very kind of like me based, and like I over the team type of a thing. Like that's something that I would kind of listen into, where it's kind of like I achieve this type of goal, in spite of other people or other people that are on my team. Like those are types of things that I would say, like, let me dig a little bit deeper to understand this type of an example.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So it's not really about what they accomplished. It's about the mindset going into it, and did they set the goal on their own, or is it something that was assigned to them? Like a person says, yeah, my goal was to make sure I attended all of the anger management classes the judge assigned me to go to, and I managed to get to all of them, right? That's not necessarily the same thing as someone who their goal was to, get 3 people promoted from underneath them over a period of a year, and they managed to get 4.
Absolutely. Or they were able to say, hey, I wanted to further my education outside of work and,
Sure.
And that type of thing. And so I took some additional classes, or I did this, or, I have a really big passion or hobby, and it's something that like I challenged myself to go do and spend time doing. And then I was able to kind of like make that into, something that was either an additional source of income or just get accolades for something that they put out. Like these are things that I'm kind of looking for. Again, it's more around are you setting goals for yourself? And then are you able to see yourself through the work that has to be done?
Yeah.
And then are you then able to understand how do you apply that continual mentality of getting work done into the work that you have?
Sure, because if you know how to do that and you like doing it, a person who has experience doing that and who likes doing it, that gets applied everywhere, right?
Exactly.
You can apply that to anything, and yeah, for sure, because eventually they're going to be asked they're going to be given goals and asked to achieve things that aren't necessarily self-driven, and they have to be able to have the kind of the storyboarding process in place that gets them through it when it isn't necessarily self-motivated, when it's because it's the goal of a team, or when it's because it's the job they've been assigned to do. Yeah, so all of these things, just the ability to get through it is necessary, because sometimes it's going to be self-motivated and sometimes it's not. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think if you're an interviewer and you're asking questions, the goal is you almost have to work backwards. You have to start with, what is it that you're hoping to see out of this person? And then how do I figure out if that person is going to be able to do that in advance, but in a way that they can't just say what's appropriate in the moment, where that they've been through it. That they've actually experienced. They're not speaking in hypotheticals. They're not talking about what they would do if something happened. They're talking about what they did do when this happened. And if you have people that can show that in a way that says, these are the attributes I'm looking for in a new hire or in a promotion, I think that's a great way forward, because again, skills can be taught. These are the types of things that it takes a lot more effort to teach these things, if they're even teachable at all.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hack Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.